Hello, everyone. It is I, Warrior Lion Stripe, here for an interesting video. If you haven't noticed from the title, this is a brand new series, and it's one that I really want to do. It's about talking about my issues and praises about the Warrior series, and I have plenty of those. But I want to go for a more book by book approach with it. So, what better way to start it off than with Into the Wild? Into the Wild is considered by most the gateway to the Warriors series, and for good reason. It's it is the first book of the entire series, and it generally gives you a good idea about what happens in the future books. It's a good introductory, if I say so myself. So, for those who aren't aware of how this book is, who've never read The Prophecies Begin, don't really understand it. The thing with Into the Wild is it's the introductory to Firestar. For those who've read the New Prophecy and onward but never got to the first arc, it's what it's how he joins ThunderClan. It's his origin story, and the interesting thing about it is that it kicks off very brutal. Uh, Already there's a fight that kind of it's a prologue pretty much. It starts off with a prologue, and this prologue is a scuffle between ThunderClan and RiverClan. The main point of view character is Tiger Claw, and who he's talking to is a Red Tail. And I think this really does wonders. I love this prologue. I mean, it has I do have an issue with it, but for the most part, I love it, and it has to do with the fact how they interact with each other. And initially there's a retreat. It sets the tone right off the bat. Boom, clan interclan issues. The clans don't like each other. They fight each other a lot. So, when Firestar, or at the time Rusty, joins ThunderClan, it makes you wonder, where does RiverClan play a role? Eh, that leads me into my issue with the prologue, and that is RiverClan's role in in Into the Wild is minimal. There's not a lot of there's hardly interaction actually, and it's not until Fire and Ice when we see more of RiverClan. No, it's primarily focused between ThunderClan and ShadowClan. If you don't know what ShadowClan is, I don't know which Warriors book you've read. Probably. Anyways, ShadowClan, of course, is the villain clan. I'm not gonna say evil clan because it's not evil. But it's the villain clan. That's how it's set up, and oh boy, and it makes you. This is the part that intrigues me. When ShadowClan at a gathering demands territory. Obviously, when Clan is not present. When Clan, actually no, I don't remember if when Clan was present or not. But I do know they were driven away. I remember that. And so RiverClan's like, we're just gonna give you our territory, which makes zero sense because if they're not willing to give territory to ThunderClan, Why are they giving territory to Shadow Clan? A clan that they, for the most part, had no borders with until Wind Clan was driven away. Yep. Wind Clan was not present at the gathering. Yep. So up until that point, River Clan had no border with Shadow Clan. They have no business with Shadow Clan. They arguably they might actually have been stronger. Like yes, Shadow Clan is presented as the largest clan. It's and all that. However, however, it's like uh hold on, I'm trying to. That's another thing about the series is that it's mainly primarily unscripted. It's where I project my thoughts in an unscripted manner. So this is where I'm gonna have to collect my thoughts, maybe go through the book because I have it right in front of me. Oh, yep. But then you look at Shadow Clan, and it's not that big. When ThunderClan invades Shadow Clan, where's the resistance? It's not actually that big. ThunderClan's patrol is tiny as hell, looking for Yellowfang. And when it's going in to invade Shadow Clan, they aren't met with that much resistance. In fact, little. I mean, yes, it's presented that, finally Broken Star is getting. He's being dethroned. You know, we can have our freedom. But that doesn't make that much sense. It would have made more sense to present it as, turns out, guess what? He killed their kids, and that is why they turn on him. But no, that is not how it goes. It's right off the bat, little resistance. And, didn't really like that. It's a weird progression, but again, it's an introductory book. It's their first one. I mean, for the most part, it was pretty well written. I mean, for the fact that it was the first book of the series, they had to work with what they could do, with the ideas that were running through their brain, and the setup. The setup is what makes this book. So when Rusty becomes Firepaw, boom, Tiger Claw, Ravenpaw, and the dead body of Redtail. Of course, Ravenpaw is about to announce the truth. Unfortunately, he passes out after he says Redtail is dead. And then Tiger Claw comes in. He's like, yeah, sorry. Redtail's dead. Oakheart killed him, but I killed Oakheart. All is good. All is good. And it's that setup. It's like, you don't think something's wrong off the bat. You don't think, oh, Tiger Claw actually killed Redtail. That's not your first thought. Like, very few people thought that. But as the story goes on, it becomes increasingly obvious that, Ravenpaw's acting weird. He's acting weird around Tiger Claw. And then the moment comes when he tells the truth to Gray Stripe, or Gray Paw, and Firepaw. Tiger Claw killed Red Tail. Instead, setup it leading into that point was just really well done. Really, really well done. And I absolutely, there's another thing I really love. Again, specifically, it's the interactions that all that I mentioned in the prologue that I liked, and it's the interactions in general in the entire story. It's how the characters behave around each other. Like I love how Lionheart is stern with Greypaw, but he's able to joke around with him at the same time. It's a healthy relationship, and I absolutely love that. And then you also have Tiger Claw and Ravenpaw with an imbalanced, unhealthy relationship in it. I really love how that is presented. And then you have Firepaw and Blue Star. It's that very stern, loving relationship. So it's not to the same kind of point with Greypaw and Lionheart, but you can kind of understand later on why Firestar sticks with Blue Star for so long, despite what happens afterward. Despite everything that happens, he sticks by her side, and it comes down to what happens in Into the Wild. She's in the characterization. Also, is what makes the book. You have Firepaw, who's this curious, like, strong-willed cat who, despite all reasons, all judgment, decides he is destined to go into the forest, adventure, do all sorts of stuff that the typical house cat rarely does. And you have Greypaw, the confident, albeit lax Tom, who's befriends this cat that he just got into a scuffle with because why not? I mean, because you have this other confident, strong-willed cat. Kind of a balance between them. Because as compared to, and you have Firepaw, and other than Ravenpaw, Greypaw has no friends. Like Dustpaw doesn't really talk to him. Sandpaw doesn't talk to him. It's really just him and Ravenpaw. And this is new cat that comes in, all nice and all that. It's welcoming compared to the competitiveness with him, Dustpaw, and Sandpaw. Because Ravenpaw is characterized as very jumpy and behind to the others. Like he's talented, very, very talented. There's no doubt on the fact that Ravenpaw is talented. It's just that in the presence of Tiger Claw, he gets jumpy and makes mistakes. Great characterization. If he gets, he's nervous. So he can do stuff. He's capable. But his nervosity gets the better of him. And it's perfect. I love that characterization. I mean, I get nervous super easily, so I can easily relate to Ravenpaw to an extent. I have not witnessed a murder, and I do not plan to. And it's the characters. I love the characters. And then you get the mention of Running Wind. If you have not watched any of my other videos, which is concerning my favorite warrior cats, I do like Running Wind. He is a flawed character, and despite the fact that he likes Fireheart, he doesn't like Cloudtail on the basis that he's a kitty pet. So he's a flawed character, but he's not necessarily an asshole. He doesn't think things through, kind of deal. But he's also a well-respected warrior. Young, but well-respected. And then there's Mousefur. Mousefur doesn't really get mentioned too often in Into the Wild, but there's a few appearances of her. Which, right off the bat, she's already that kind of sharp tongued character that we've all loved by the time Power of Three comes around. And then there's Longtail. Longtail, the overconfident, like brash and reckless Tom that we all grew to dislike right away. At least with Tiger Claw, we we were edged into disliking him when the truth comes out in his behavior with Ravenpaw. But you have Longtail right off the bat. We don't like him. Yeah, you just don't like him. And then Darkstripe. Like Darkstripe is mysterious. Like he's the kind of he's unfriendly, but he cares about ThunderClan. In fact, like we see how Darkstripe behaves around Firepaw. You don't like it, but at the same time, he loves ThunderClan. He will do anything for ThunderClan. And that was a great characterization. Later on that in the future books, because unfortunately, that comes into question later, and let's just say I don't like the end result. And then you have Yellowfang. Yellowfang, phenomenal character. Thing is that when Yellowfang is introduced, there was a point where it was kind of getting repetitive. It felt more like it was just sticking to ThunderClan. So Yellowfang comes in, and it alters things. And this is the first time Firepaw's broken a code since he's entered. Ever since he's joined ThunderClan, he's stuck to the code. This is the first time he's broken it. And of course, he's punished for it. While at the same time, Yellowfang gets shelter and food and comfort. And although Yellowfang is very sharp-tongued, very rough, there's a sense of kindness to her. And there's hints to the whole what happens in Bright Flowers kits and all that. There's hints to that. Like when Yellowfang freaks out about the kids, about seeing kids, it's like, whoa, where did that come from? And then later at another gathering, Broken Star reveals, hey, there's a cat named Yellowfang. We kind of had to banish her because she, quote unquote, killed some kids. So why don't you just kind of either kill her or take her to us, and we'll take care of her. And so obviously, ThunderClan wants to, cooperate, because there's also the threat of invasion if you don't take care of her or give her to to ShadowClan. And my oh my. Again, Yellowfang is by far my favorite character in this book. Because, it's just the layers, the setup of this book is phenomenal. And the way they characterize Yellowfang, the way they set up her character and her struggles, perfect. I don't think it's just the kind of thing it's very difficult to replicate with other characters. It's very difficult to make that kind of setup. Into the Wild kind of was a anomaly for the for book series at that time. It's very again, it's difficult to make that kind of setup. You don't think interesting. Something is important about that. When she freaks out at the two kids, at first she's you think, she just doesn't like kids. That's usually kind of the first thought. Like, oh no, she doesn't like kids. Bad cat. Something's bad about her at the same time good. So, and it's clever, and I like that clever detail. Again, it's a setup thing. Because back to the earlier point, when she freaks out about the kid, and then turns out Broken Star reveals, hey, she kind of killed a few kids. You're thinking to yourself, oh my, there's a connection there. Maybe Firepaw is actually wrong. The main character is wrong. Of course, the main character is right. But it's actually a relief that he's right. Because, he's come in, he's brand new. He doesn't understand clan life, so of course you're gonna automatically think he might actually be wrong. But when he's revealed to be right, that is like a whole nother sense of relief. Because, why I say cuz a lot. Sorry. And I, when I get excited, I kind of start rambling and rambling and rambling because it's Into the Wild. It's the definitive book. It is the gateway to the rest of the series. If you do not read this book, it's very difficult to understand the rest of the series because you're not going to have the same understanding of a character's growth and personality without this book. Sure, you can just start on the first book of another arc, but then you don't understand what happened in the prophecies begin. Not truly. And you kind of have to start at the beginning. And that's just because of how the series was set up. But I don't have a problem with that. I think it's good to start with this book and then kind of have an idea with how the series has progressed. It's a really good indicator with the progression of the series. And, it's, and honestly, again, if you've watched my other stuff, I haven't made my dislike for the Broken Code a secret at all. I have not made it a secret. But I do think I don't know how many more points I can make without being the stereotypical Into the Wild is the greatest book ever. Which I do prefer other books over Into the Wild. I will admit that. But there's not a lot to say is bad about this book because it's literally an introductory book. Anything you say negatively about it, if you say something negative about it, it's easy. You can't. It is difficult to do so because again, it's an introductory book. It's the first of an entire series. Which that isn't to say don't complain about issues of it because the prophecies begin in general suffers with an issue with falling back on certain details. It suffers with that, unfortunately. Now, I'm trying to think of another thing to bring up. I think another thing I do like, I mean, as much as I ultimately didn't make sense, and it's the threat of ShadowClan. ShadowClan was a genuine threat. And that is the best way to introduce these clans. Like, It's a dangerous world. These clans are going to be genuine threats, and if Shadow Clan just could just get rid of Wind Clan with no problem, dear goodness, it's understandable. I guess it is understandable why River Clan was like, oh dear goodness, we might want to give away some land. So obviously, the clan resists because it's the protagonist clan. Why would it just give away territory? You gotta stand strong. You gotta resist. But that's obviously not an issue. It it's a cliche, but it's not necessarily an issue. And ultimately, just I know at this point I'm repeating points. Warriors Into the Wild is the definitive book. It's the first one. It introduces you to all sorts of characters, their reasons, their conflicts, their personalities, all sorts of stuff about them that are just super important to understand, which are difficult to understand if you don't read if you just read the other books before this one. Let's see. I do wish that they were a bit more. There was a bit more scenes with Red Tail. I do think there should have been more, just to kind of really get a glimpse of Red Tail instead of killing him off. Like I know it's part of the mystery. He mysteriously dies just as Firepaw joins, but his absence is weird. I do think there should have been more scenes with him. But again, it's not necessarily an issue. That's just a personal thought. Now I gotta look through the allegiances because I want to make sure I touch on certain characters that I do think are important to note. Blackfoot and Clawface. What's to say about them without referencing Blackstar's Reckoning and all that? Oh, apparently Little Paw was Clawface's apprentice. I think that's a pretty good note, because Little Paw obviously turns into Little Cloud. Uh, so the fact that Little Cloud becomes a medicine cat later, and he's genuinely the sweetest character. Like, genuinely the sweetest character ShadowClan had to offer. And you have a Clawface, like certainly he's in one of the novellas, no mangas. He's a conflicted character. Like he doesn't necessarily totally agree with Broken Star, but at the same time, leader's word is law. But he's a shitty character. Like I'm gonna be upfront with that. Like he's a genuinely shitty character. Like he murdered Spotted Leaf because G didn't let the kits go, and he was ordered to get the kits. So he's like, "Yeah, let's just kill her." So he killed a cat to win his battle, a medicine cat, no less. But I do think making all the characters nice and dandy, sunshines, rainbows, kittens, puppies, no, realism. It's realistic. People are gonna do that. Unfortunately, people in the real world are gonna do that. It's actually realistic, in a sense, human wise. And Smudge, Smudge. I love Smudge. I think it's important that Firestar, or I keep saying the modern names, Firepaw. It's important that Firepaw went from seeing Smudge at the house in the two-leg place to seeing Smudge in the forest. It's it's a symbol of growth. Yeah, for me personally, that's just how I see it. Firepaw still kind of conflicted to join, to go into the forest, and Smudge was like, no, no, you can't go in there. It's dangerous. And then suddenly Smudge is walking into the forest to see Firepaw to make sure he's all right and adjusted well. Which, holy shit. Smudge went from being a scaredy cat, the stereotypical scaredy cat, to growing a pair and waltzing his way into the territory to look for Firepaw, to look for his best friend. That is a best friend right there. And of course, and that interaction between them is pretty important because, Smudge still kind of insists on wanting Firepaw to come back. But Firepaw's like, no, I'm happy here. It's tough, but I've learned new things I wouldn't have learned at the house place. In a home. I'd say, all in all, this book definitely has a 9.1 out of 10. And that's just from 1 to 10, 9.1. Again, it's character development, the characterization in general. The progression of the story, it worked. The setup helped, the plot, the overall story progression, all just came together so perfectly and created what is now the Warriors fandom. It is the reason why Warriors moved beyond that first book. It is the reason why there is a series and a fandom to begin with. And again, it's for good reason. There's a reason why it's considered the definitive book, the gateway to Warriors. And I think it's earned that title. I definitely believe it earned that title. Again, I have books that I prefer over Into the Wild. But you cannot deny the amount of influence Into the Wild has had. There has been countless Warriors fans who have read this book. This was the first one. And they have remained loyal. For the most part. I mean, there's a reason why you have Blixamy and Moon Kitty, who are here today on this platform. They're here because of this series. I mean, Blixamy went from, admittedly, Blixamy did go from, like, music and duos and duets and all that to Warriors content, but, there was always a sense of Warriors there. And Moon Kitty has been Warriors really just across the board. Warriors. And if it weren't for this book, neither of them would be here. That or Blixamy would be still doing primarily music. As she is right now, technically. But there wouldn't be as much variation. Maybe there would have been something else. Blixamy hasn't hidden the fact that she likes Pokemon. Moon Kitty hasn't hidden the fact that she likes Pokemon. They could have been very different creators. And that's not just them. It's like all sorts of people. Bright Guardian, Akira. We're not going to talk about, I was going to mention a name, but it's too soon for that. Unfortunately, allegations are a bit strong and convincing. And there's also countless other people that just wouldn't be here on this platform. And let's be honest with ourselves. If the Warriors community did not exist, where would the art and animation community be right now? A lot of people in the arts and animation community, they aren't they have connections to the Warriors fandom. So if a huge chunk of the Warriors fandom just disappears, you can only imagine how much smaller the art community could be. That's just food for thought. Anyways, that is all. That is the end of the first episode of Let's Discuss Warriors. And thank you for joining. Uh, yeah, it's a bit of a wreck right now, but rough beginnings, am I right? Anyways, that is Warrior Line Stripe out, and see you all in the next video.